Water is a 2005 drama film written and directed by Deepa Mehta with screenplay by Anurag Kashyap. It is set in 1938 and explores the lives of widows at an ashram in Varanasi. The film is the third and final installment of Mehta's Elements trilogy. It was preceded by Fire, which came out in 1996, and Earth, which came out in 1998. An 8-year-old child bride, Chuya, accompanies her dying husband on his last journey. India, 1938. And traditional Hindu scriptures said the widows have three options. Their most virtuous decision would be to burn with the dead husbands. If her husband's family permits, the widow may marry the husband's younger brother. For Chuya, like most widows, the only option was to lead a life of self denial. Her father abandons her in a widow's compound where, with a shaved head and plain sari, she will live the rest of her long life in penitence according to the laws of Manu, which are sacred Hindu texts and provide the epigram for the movie. A widow should be long suffering until death, self restrained, and chaste. The compound is located strategically near the river Ganges. The theme of water is reprised throughout the film. Water is necessary for both physical and spiritual life. It is simultaneously sacred and profane. Fleas and sins are both washed away by it. People bathe in the river, cleanse their bodies and souls, drink it, conduct religious rituals on it, and use it as holy water. The widow's compound is run by Madhu Didi, who explains to Choya the religious duty of a widow. In grief, we are all sisters here, and this house is our refuge. Our holy books say a wife is part of her husband while he is alive, right? The other widows obediently assent. Madhu Didi keeps the oppressive traditions alive and current in the compound. And when husbands die, she concludes the catechism. Wives also half die. But Choya points out that means that widows are also half alive. And she immediately disrupts the quiet of the compound. Through her, indirectly, the wheels of both tragedy and liberation are set in motion. The compound is in need of disruption. The widows look and act like concentration camp inmates. While each widow has her own story, we get to know only a few. Madhu Didi gets by with a pet bird for company and by smoking thick wads of ganja, supplied by Gulabi, a eunuch who has access to the compound. She has good reasons for escaping into oblivion and soon becomes apparent. Gulabi shapes Madhu Didi's view of outside world, passing news and gossip through the barred window. When Gulabi tells her that Gandhi had called the untouchables children of God, she is repulsed. Widows were also untouchables. She knows that her survival is intimately connected to the pariah status of widowhood. The most elderly widow, whose husband had also died when she was young, tells Chuya that life is unhappiness. She passes the time dreaming about sweets like the ones she had eaten in her wedding and pines for the only physical pleasure she had known. Another widow, Shakuntala Didi, seeks a spiritual answer for her unhappiness, performing daily rituals and prayers. The Hindu holy man from whom she seeks enlightenment asks her, Shakuntala, you have been doing this service for many years, so many years of sacrifice and devotion. Do you feel closer to self liberation? If self liberation means detachment from worldly desires, then no, I am no closer. Whatever happens, the holy man says, never lose your faith, never lose your faith. He represents the religious path that seeks to end the endless cycle of rebirth. In his view, the unhappiness of the world is caused by ignorance. It's this ignorance that is our misfortune. In a way, he's right, but he's looking for answer in wrong place. The widows beg for money to pay their rent and to purchase their daily needs. Madhu Didi also prostitutes women. Kalyani lives alone upstairs in the compound. She is young, attractive, and her hair is uncut. To Chuya, she appears as an angel. To Narayan, the young idealistic lawyer and follower of Gandhi, she is goddess he discovers, falls in love with, and plans to marry. For Madhu Didi and the pimp, Gulabi, she is commodity, ferries across the river to the homes of upper class Brahmins whose wives connive to in her prostitution. Filmmaker Deepa Mehta is exposing multiple hypocrisies. Kalyani lives upstairs, isolated from other widows. She eats alone because, as one widow points out to Chuya, with her uncut hair and clients, eating with Kalyani would pollute our food. This food, however, is purchased through her exploitation. The theme of pollution is pervasive in the film. At the river, a bridal party is performing a ritual when a widow approaches to retrieve water. Watch it, she is warned. Don't let your shadow touch the bride. Even a widow's shadow is impure and untouchable. At another time, Kalyani is outside the compound by the river, chasing her runaway dog. She accidentally collides with a Brahmin wife, who we learn later is Narayan's mother. The Brahmin is horrified. What are you doing? She demands of Kalyani. Widows shouldn't run around like unmarried girls. You have polluted me. I have to bathe again. To touch her is to be polluted. Yet her husband is one of Kalyani's clients, and to bring a prostitute to her husband is the duty of a virtuous wife. Confronted by Narayan, his father advised him not to marry a widow but to make her his mistress. The holy text teaches that a virtuous wife who remains chaste when her husband has died goes to heaven, but a woman who is unfaithful to her husband is reborn in the womb of a jackal. By this teaching, the father's selfish actions condemn the widow in the next life. But Narayan's father supplies a religious justification. Brahmins can sleep with whomever they want, and the women they sleep are the blessed. He confidently proclaims, her touch is polluting, his touch is a blessing. In disgust, Narayan retorts, do you know what Lord Ram told his brother? Never to honor those Brahmins who interpret the holy text in their own benefit. Religion, truth, and conscience are at odds. Through Choya, Madhudidi learns that Kalyani and Narayan plan to marry. She flies into rage. Madhudidi well-being depends on keeping control of Kalyani while she is young and preventing her escape through marriage. As Chuya had been advised, even to think of remarriage is a sin. And when Chuya sought an explanation, the reply was simple: ask God. Find enlightenment through faith and religion. Both her religious and pecuniary interests are threatened. Shameless, she shouts at Kalyani. You will sink yourself and us. We will be cursed. We must live in purity to die in purity. The hypocrisy is palpable to Kalyani. Then why do you send me across the river? She demands. For survival, Madhudidi replies. And how we survive here, no one can question, not even God. To remarry is to sin, she is saying. To prostitute someone is survival, and not even God can object. There is a religious text for every occasion. Yet, the lovers' pact is doomed by fate. While being ferried across the river once again, this time not by Gulapi as prey, but by Narayana as his future wife. Kalyani recognizes his house and realizes she had been prostituted to Narayan's father. She demands to be taken back. She can't express the truth but tells Narayan to simply ask his father. While Narayan is confronting the old Brahmin, Kalyani returns to the compound, but Madhudedi intends only to continue selling her. In despair of her plight and apparently lost love, Kalyani drowns herself in the river. While Kalyani's body is being cremated on the river bank, Shakuntala, the widow who had pursued a spiritual answer, tries to understand through the lens of her religion. The holy texts say all this is an illusion, she tells Narayan, looking out over the river. But his realism is blunt. Kalyani's death is no illusion. Have faith, Shakuntala counsels. Why is your faith so strong? Asks Narayan. Shakuntala can merely answer, I don't know. She then asks the big question, why are we widows sent here? There must be a reason for it. There is. Narayan bluntly provides the materialistic answer. One less mouth to feed, four saris saved, one bed, and a corner is saved in the family home. There is no other reason why you are here. Disguised as religion, it's just about money. Surprisingly, she had heard a similar conclusion from the holy man. Shakuntala had once asked him, you have studied the holy scriptures. Is it written that widows should be treated badly? The holy man had first supplied the traditional answer based on the duties a widow owes her dead husband. But he had then added, however, a law was recently passed which favors widow remarriage. He was referring to a secular law, British in inspiration. Deepa Mehta is pointing out that one of the ironies in British imperialism was that it challenged some traditional customs. Shakuntala had been astonished by the holy man's words. A law? Why don't we know about it? We ignore the laws that don't benefit us, he replied, expressing a realism that would be echoed by Narayan. The holy man had learned something practical from his studies. This revelation, which answered her search for knowledge, unexpectedly had set in motion Shakuntala's first moment of discovery and self liberation, realized through action and not contemplation or ritual. She had taken the keys away from Madhudidi and released Kalyani, who was then free to meet her lover. Shakuntala did not know that her liberating action would end in a double tragedy. Not only did Kalyani take her life, but Madhudidi, who had thereby lost her most lucrative widow, turned instead to Chuya, who still wanted to go home. I am like your mother, Madhudidi croons. You believe me, don't you? She tells Chuya that Gulapi will take you home. Home is Narayan's father's bedroom. Chuya walks in, gapes in astonishment around the rich and imposing rooms, and says, I come here to play. Shakuntala realizes too late what has befallen Chuya and is unable to save her. But she then takes a second action of self liberation. The holy man had told Shakuntala that Gandhi is one of the few people in the world who listens to the voices of his conscience. But when Shakuntala had asked, but what if our conscience conflicts with our faith? The holy man had been silent, unable to supply an answer. His silence represented the dead end to which religious speculation leads. Gandhi would later supply the answer. Shakuntala carries Chuya to the train station where Gandhi is communing with his supporters. During a brief stop, Narayan is on board the train, planning to accompany Gandhi on his mission. As the train departs, in an act of desperation, Shakuntala runs alongside the train, asking people to take Chuya with them. She spots Narayan on the train and hands Chuya over to him. The train departs, carrying Chuya away while leaving the teary eyed Shakuntala behind. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching.